And I would like Miss Metcalf, will you please lead us in the pledge?
Yes, Madam President, I will do that.
Thank you.
All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we are at action item number 3. Before we do this, can I say something really quick?
Sure.
Okay, because it's my last second here in the presidency. I just wanted to say this. If 10 years ago you had told me that this is where I would be sitting as a former teacher, fighting for my kids, fighting for my students, fighting for my job with the former administration, I would have told you were out of your mind, crazy. So I am so glad that I'm here with this board, with this administration. Very thankful that I am with you guys and not with them. Okay,
Madam President, before you go on, may I say something?
yes.
I say this all the time in different ways, but being a governing board member is in some ways a very thankless job. Y'all don't get paid anything. You all ultimately have to make decisions that oftentimes are heavy decisions to make. But I'm fortunate to work for a board president that truly puts students first and does what's in the best interest of students. And so as grateful as you might be, we are as equally grateful that we have the opportunity and the luxury to work with a board like you and a board president like yourself. So thank you for this past year and the time that you gave to help our students have the opportunities they deserve. So thank you.
Yes, I agree. Our board, we have very mindful, respectful discussions, and it's very important that we do that. And at the end of every decision we make, we always make sure students are first. Okay, now that all the hugging and squishiness is done, I need to call for a nomination for, actually, I would like to nominate Mr. Covington for our board president.
Oh, wow. I'll second. I had to mount the cookie.
Okay. Yeah, we're good. Okay, we have a second. I just need to call for a vote.
A discussion, I believe.
Oh, discussion. That's right. Is there a discussion?
Madam, am I on? The way the policy is written, you got to find all the nominees before you have the election.
Let's say that.
You have to get all the nominees before you have an election. If
Okay.
there's anybody else.
Is there anybody else who would like to nominate someone else?
Do we have to move that we close it? Does it take a vote to close nominations? If so, I move that we close nominations.
I'll second.
All right. You got to turn it.
I'm on?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Mine's green. It's a different
Yeah,
mic,
it was the
so
second.
don't get confused with what's going on over here. Okay, there, a second. I need to call for a vote. Mr. Metcalf. McAfee.
Okay, Watkins,
Aye.
Covington,
Yes.
Aye.
Metcalf,
Aye.
Boggs,
Aye.
Lane,
Aye.
Ellingson. Is it Ellingson or Ellington? Ellison, I'm sorry. Ellison, I just called you a different person completely.
On my third meeting, we're good.
Ellison said aye. Okay. Boyle,
Aye.
Hobson,
Aye.
and McAfee's an aye. Motion carries.
All right.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
I didn't get all of my stuff there.
Took me 3 hours and 42 minutes to get set up.
Thank you.
Water,
Moving
Food.
out.
name tag.
Congratulations there, sir.
Thank you for nominating me.
You're welcome. I'll take care of your dad.
Appreciate, yeah. It blends in.
I'll remember when I go outside. Let's take this, put that there. Hold on. Gotta find where we are. Yeah. Okay, we've done, we're in action items 3B, nominations for board clerk. Do I have any nominations for board clerk?
I would like to nominate Amber McAfee again. She's been doing such a wonderful job.
I'll second.
I'll second that. Any other nominations? If so, I'll call this closed for nominations and we can do a vote. Or actually, it's called something else.
Yeah, call for the vote. Okay.
Call for the vote.
Watkins,
Aye.
Call for the question.
Covington,
Aye.
Metcalf,
Aye.
Boggs,
Aye.
Lane,
Aye.
Ellison,
Aye.
Boyle,
Aye.
Hobson,
Aye.
aye, and McAfee's an aye. Motion carries.
Yay.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
All right. We have a secretary and a president now. All right.
Time to work.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
I would like a motion for the items subjects C through L. And if there are any comments that want to be made, we can make comments on anything that goes in there. If you want to pull something out, let me know. I'd like a motion for that.
I'll move that we approve items 3C through L.
I'll second.
Anyone want to say anything?
Any discussion?
Mr. President, if I might, it may be a benefit, Director of Legal Services, for those in attendance, I mean, can you just briefly explain what most of those items are? These are yearly items that,
They're annual items that we do every year that tells the superintendent what he has to do, the president what to do, the secretary what to do, and our lawyer what to do, and who can sign what, all the paperworks, and who can choose lawyers, and, other things.
Mr. Covington?
That's a pretty fair summary of what you're doing.
Go along with the summary. Okay, can we call for the question then?
Mr. Covington,
Mr. Hobson.
question, sorry. Just for clarification, we're appointing at 3J an equal opportunity officer, and I assume that's the superintendent?
yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And are you the same person as the Section 504 coordinator? Is that the same role?
Yes, yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Then
Call the
for
question.
Call for the question, which means to vote.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Motion carries.
There's no hammer. Okay. I have a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
all right. Call for the question, acclamation.
All in favor to close the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting's closed.
This retention clerk. Hearing officers. We got that. Got 10,840, 42 pages to change here. Okay. Okay, I have to open up the new regular meeting. Following the organizational meeting. I call this to order. Gotta have a hammer. Gavel. Okay. We post the public call to order and pledge of allegiance. Mr. Watkins, would you do the pledge again? This way we won't go too fast for him. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, All right, call order pledge. Okay. Okay, need a motion for the regular meetings of December 11th?
I make a motion that we approve item 3A, regular meeting minutes from December 11th, 2023.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? I do have one question. In 5H, we had a Mercedes. Is that Mercedes going to find its license or whatever it's called?
You mean from our last?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that car still going to be taken in if we can find the proper paper?
we would be happy to take it in if we could find the proper paper. The challenge with it is that's become very difficult. We've tried and so we would be happy to if the appropriate paperwork is submitted.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let's call for the question.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, we have a work session minutes from December 19th. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I make a motion that we approve, item 3B, work study session minutes from December 19th, 2023.
I will second that.
Mr. President,
Yes.
since I was absent, I'm abstaining from this vote.
Can you speak up?
Since I was absent, I'm abstaining from this vote.
Okay, you abstains. I also
And-
abstain.
And I also abstain.
Mr. Boyle. Hey, turn up.
I still have to call it and say abstain then.
Okay, I will.
So I'll call everybody when you say.
Okay, roll call vote.
Okay. Watkins,
Aye.
Covington,
Abstain?
Metcalf,
Aye.
Boggs,
Aye.
Lane,
Aye.
Ellison, Boyle,
Abstain.
Hobson,
Abstain.
and McAfee's an aye. Motion carries.
Okay, as far as I can tell, we're on the personnel, item 6.
Call to
I believe the call to the public, sir.
Did I call the public? I blew that one. Any public?
No.
Thank you.
Well, it's anticlimactic.
I'm going too fast for everything. I'm thinking of something else. Okay, I turned the page too soon, that's all. Sorry about that. We have consent agendas, A through J. Any motion?
I'll move we approve consent agenda items A through J.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? I have some discussion. We have we have travel for 2 different board members, our Midwinter Leadership Conference and the National Travel Policy. Are there any other board members that would like to go to those before we? so we can
Mr. President, I believe we're not
Don't we
we're
have
not
to wait
there.
till we get there?
Yeah.
This is, I think
Yeah.
this one is,
Is that A?
no, it was just focus school software.
Staff travel is just in the consent
Yeah.
agenda. Board travel will come.
Right here.
We have to go
E
with
and
that
F.
one. Yeah, I and J, because we're on consent agenda right here.
Yeah.
And so it's on focus school software and this one. So if you want to see who it's for, let's see. This one,
That's fine with that, but I'm
Yeah.
looking at
That's
E, yeah, I'm looking at E and F.
I don't think your numbers are, I think you're missing a page.
I'm missing a page?
I believe so.
So, Mr.
I
President,
missed a page
Here, why don't you just use this? You want to share mine?
on 4. I'm way ahead.
Okay. Not
I'm
missing a
trying to
page.
get this meeting
Not
over
missing a page, he just.
Okay.
as soon as possible.
It's okay.
Okay, call the public. I did the call the public, didn't I? No, that's right, okay. All right. Take the notes away. All right. Thank you, that's why we have, it's a teamwork up here. Get me going. Kind of nervous being it the first time, sometime, in a long time. It's a difficult job. Back one.
Yeah, oh, should be one more.
Okay.
So, what's one more?
Can't go another one.
It's in there.
My fingers don't work.
That's okay.
No, there we go. Thank you. Boy, I have these,
Now we're ready to do 5.
I like being taken care of here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, consent agenda number 5, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Okay.
Items A through J, I believe.
Yeah, A through J, and I think we had a motion, didn't we?
We have a motion and a second.
And a second. So then we can.
Discussion.
Okay, now that I'm in the wrong place. Okay,
Call the question.
Call a question.
call for the question.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Say no. Motion carries.
I still want to talk about iron. I wanted to talk about those. I blew it. Okay. Personnel, item 6, any motion?
Mr. President, I move that we approve item 6A, personnel.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mr. Wilson, do you need to add anything?
Mr. President, members of the governing board, no, this is typical for what we provide to you every single board meeting in relationship to new staff, extra addendas, or staff that are no longer going to be part of the organization.
Thank you. Dr. Wilson. Get that right?
Just Wilson's fine.
Okay. We have a motion and everything. Call for the question.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7, information discussion. A is policy revision and new politics. I think it's Dr. Kevin Cobell.
There are 3 new policy, well, 2 revisions and 1 new policy. The new policy would be to include, as part of the compensation package and a fringe benefit, the meals that the board sometimes provides to the staff prior to holidays or teacher appreciation. So this would, under the IRS rules, if you put it into as compensation, it's not taxable, and it also complies with the USFR. But we would still have to come back to get your approval on each meal as it comes up. So this is just to make it so that it's less of an accounting nightmare. And that's that one. The second one that's new is the donation of perishable food items at the end of the semester when there's a long break. The bistro and the culinary, sometimes the food is going to go bad. This just allows us to donate it to a community food bank. Policy revision on holidays. This is the third time's the charm. I left out full-time in front of 12-month employees. This just inserts full-time in front of 12-month employees so that part-time employees will not get paid for holidays. And with respect to parking, we're proposing to increase the parking fee from $15 to $60 and to not include that in the tuition for adult students. So everybody would be paying the same.
Did you say $50 or 15?
60. And $60. 60. And that is still significantly lower than many of the surrounding districts, which are like $150, $200 in some districts. And we still have in there the waiver for the financially strapped.
Okay. Mr. Lane has a question?
Yes, sir.
The funding we gather on parking, how is that money spent once we harvest that from?
That's an excellent question, Mr. Lane, and that is not in my wheelhouse. I don't know where the money goes once he gets here.
But, Ms. Perez, would you be willing to?
Good evening, Mr. President, governing board members. Those funds are deposited into one of our auxiliary accounts that's designated just for parking-related expenses such as security cards, maintenance of those security cards, security cameras, and eventually we'll need to do some upgrades to our current parking lot areas. But they're strictly designated for those.
Okay, so all the totality of the funds are used to support the parking operations.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We'll go on to 7B, employee work calendar. Dr. Wilson?
Mr. President, members of the governing board, I'm going to take a long story and try to make it short, and then I'm going to ask Ms. Perez to come up and actually explain what I'm talking about. One of the things that I hold as part of my responsibility as a superintendent is to leave the organization better than when I found it. And in a lot of different ways, but one of those is fiscally responsible.
Done.
Fiscally responsible as well. And one of the things I began to realize is that there were systems in place that I think inadvertently created the likelihood that I would leave with it not as fiscally responsible as I would like it to be. And this is what I mean. Historically in the organization, there were not employees that stayed for long periods of time, especially 12-month employees that stayed for long periods of time. Employees that are 12-month full-time employees earn vacation. And as a full-time employee, the vacation that is not used when I leave, the policy requires the organization to pay me out for those vacation days because that's part of my contract. That's not a horrifically horrible issue. If there's one or two people that are accruing vacation days and they leave, then the organization doesn't have a whole lot of dollars online there, right? But increasingly and thankfully and hopefully, we will wind up having employees that come to us and stay with us. We want them to come to us, stay with us, and finish their career. Start their career, finish their career, which means that likelihood of more and more employees having amassed quite a bit of vacation time becomes somewhat problematic towards the end of the contracts when all those have to get paid out. The vacation days have to get paid out. Compounding that problem is that we had put into the calendar so many days in which we weren't in session to work that it would make it difficult for individuals to use all their vacation days. So we were creating a well-intended, but creating a problem that was going to create a fiscal issue for the organization at some point in time, and I don't want to be the superintendent that does that. At the same time, I want to make sure that I'm being fair to people, that we're being fair to people, because there are some who have come to us partly because there is time within the calendar. Remember those days I said we put in there? Those are days that they have enjoyed and they enjoy spending with their family, and time matters to them. There are others, like myself, that don't have the opportunity to enjoy that time and will wind up creating this cliff for you when I leave in terms of having the vacation paid out. So the money's going to be okay for me, but I'm not going to have access to the time. And so we sat down as a leadership team and we said, well, how can we curb this issue and make it that it wasn't creating a fiscal issue for the organization long-term, but being fair to employees short-term? And the solution was to give employees a choice in the calendar contract that they would like to work on. One option protects the integrity of time. The other option protects the integrity of compensation. But what we can't do is have both. I can't have a situation where I'm having a bunch of time plus getting the benefit of the compensation, because that's going to create a negative situation for the organization. So what Ms. Perez is going to come up here and talk about are the two different options that we would like to present to you and to our employees. Come back again at our next meeting and have you either approve or not, so we could begin the process of creating our work calendars and eventually contracts for our employees for 24-25 school year. Ms. Perez?
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. We are offering two different options. One we call option A, option B. Option A is very similar to the current offerings that we have, where employees do have 27 holidays. These 27 holidays include all federal holidays, plus your fall break, spring break, and a couple of other days along the way, kind of like an extended Thanksgiving break, 4th of July. And then obviously during the winter break. In addition to, employees also earn their regular accrual rates. The only difference that right now that we have in the vacation accrual rate is that there are certain classifications that are not capped. We are asking that option be capped at 320 hours for all employees. And then there's the 2 personal days. So that's currently planned A. We're not proposing any changes to those holidays or the personal days, but we are, like I mentioned, requesting a cap for 320 hours for all classifications. For this option A, for those employees that choose to stay within option A, when they terminate their employment with EVIT, the payout rate for their vacation would be reduced from currently being 100% to 35.4%. In addition to that, we obviously understand that there are some employees that have currently earned that time under the current plan, so they would be paid out at 100% of any remaining balance within their accrual rates for hours that they've accrued to date. So, however, we would then reduce any hours that they take moving forward. So, for example, an employee has 100 hours as of today. They earn 40 additional hours, but let's say they also take 40 hours. Those 40 hours would be deducted from their current balance of 40, so they would be paid 60 hours at their 100% because that's the current policy, but then the remaining balance would be paid out at the 35.4. Hope that makes sense. Option B is where it's a little bit more different, where we are reducing the holidays to 16 holidays, which are all the federal holidays. Plus, we did include some extra days during the winter break and an additional day within the Thanksgiving break, which is the day after Thanksgiving. Again, there's no changes to the accrual rate for vacation, but then again, we're also asking to have that vacation capped at 320 hours per employee. And we're also asking to increase the number of personal days from 2 to 4. So when you're looking at a comparison from between A and B, you're looking at 9 less days for those employees that opt into option B. And then the payout, if someone is to leave EVIT, would be paid at 100%. The one optional piece that we also added to option B is that employees could buy into their current leave balances. So let's say I have 300 hours and this year I choose to request that some of those hours be paid out. That would be an option under option B, which means it would be paid at whatever current rate I have. The proposal would be effective July 1st of 2024, and the options, the option A and option B would be given to all current employees. Then any employee hired after July 1st will only be given the option of Plan B, option B. Just to clarify, sick leave remains unchanged, so this does not affect sick leave.
So, Mr. President, members of the governing board, our hope in doing this is that providing individuals choice within the organization based on what interests they have, what matters to them most, ultimately growing in a direction that employees coming into the organization are all on option B, which will in time curb and cap the liability the organization has in terms of expenditure for unused vacation days. What it does do in option B, and just, you know, to be transparent, I plan to choose option B because that's just the nature of the position I'm in. What this will do, though, is it will also push me to use vacation time because I don't have the luxury of those 9 days. And so it will also probably lessen the amount of days I have to sell back to the organization. The benefit to those in option B, as Ms. Perez said, though, is because I can't use my vacation, doesn't mean I want to hang on to it till I leave. I hope to be here for another 45 years. That's a lot of time to accrue. I'd rather have the ability to sell some of that periodically throughout my career in order to use the advantage of me not being able to have access to time because of my job. I don't. But our hope is that it gives employees choice. We've met with most of the employees affected, and they're appreciative of having the choice, at least many of them. Some obviously aren't, but I think the vast majority are appreciative of having the choice, and we will find that probably it'll get split close to 50-50 between the option A and the option B, just based on what individuals perceive as in the best interest of them and their family. So we will come back next week, our next meeting, as an action item so that we can begin the process of beginning to formulate recommendations for contracts for 24-25. And obviously, this is a step in that direction in terms of having employee calendars. So thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Ms. Perez.
And
I
Dr.
have
Wilson,
a
if I can
question,
just...
Mr. President.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hobbs.
I'm sorry. So the question is about a bank run. So let's assume that for some reason, everybody who has leave time built up decides Dr. Wilson wants to cash out his 320 hours, and everybody downstream says, I want to cash out my amount. We don't have reserves sufficient to cover that, do we?
Go ahead, Ms. So that's a
Budget,
great,
but- go
that's a great question. I'm gonna defer to Ms. President and the cash reserves. I think when we look at, when you look at the 40 hours that you have, that this requires us to maintain, so the gap would be that, you know, those who have over 40 hours, the vast majority of employees that have vacation time currently are at the 40 to 100. So, and the reason why we're coming to you this now is because we don't want it to be the 200, the 300, the 400. This is more of a proactive, long-term approach towards curbing that issue down the road. So to answer your question, I don't believe that the number of individuals that were to cash out, if they were to cash out all of the hours down to 40, is as large as we think it is, but I'll defer to Ms. Perez in terms of the financial liability.
Right, so just to clarify a couple of things. On the personal days, when we said we're increasing from 2 days to 4 days, those do not carry from year to year. So I wanted to make sure I clarified that first. And then also just a correction on the minimum number, even if you have the opportunity to cash out, we do have the requirement of 80 hours, not 40. So to that point, we would have the reserves to pay out for anybody that has above that, above those hours. And we're only offering that as a one-time per fiscal year, so we'll be able to evaluate that on an annual basis and budget accordingly.
We may want to have some control on, you know, that we reserve some discretion to pay it out over the course of the year or something like that. Just, I mean, I'm just worried about the bank run. You know?
Right.
Well, I'm sure it'll never.
Right, and there's not that many employees that it would impact where it would have a high financial
Okay.
impact given the 80-hour requirement.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Mr. K? Mr. Lee?
Just want to clarify this is, push the button. Sorry about that. Clarify, this only applies to people who are on 12-month contracts, not the teaching staff?
Correct, absolutely. This is our high school teaching staff, this does not apply to them. It's just 12-month. It would be adult ed instructors, they're 12-month, but it is just for 12-month employees.
Okay, and what is the number of sick days you're allowed in it?
To use or to accrue?
To use or accrue?
Go ahead, Ms. Perez.
Yes, thank you. To accrue is 1 day per month that employees earn. Obviously, to use will be dependent upon their bank, their leave balances that they have.
And can they use a personal day to supplement their sick day?
Yes.
Okay. But they can accrue sick days?
They will continue to accrue similar to what they have been, which is the equivalent to the 1 day per month on their contract.
But it's not capped?
It's not capped.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody's clear on that.
And the payout on the sick days is not at the daily rate, it's a fraction of that, I can't think of what it is. And so the financial liability that the organization has on the accruing of sick days is much different than the vacation days.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Please.
Okay, just a question. Are any of the sick days fronted for employees upon hire? So in other words, if they are starting in July or August, depending on if they're faculty, and somebody becomes sick with COVID, what an awful opportunity, but are they fronted the sick days up front? So they wouldn't have enough earned at the beginning of the year?
Right. Right now, our current leave policy only has it where they're accruing on a bi-weekly basis.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Any other?
Yes, Mr. President, a question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Watkins.
When it comes to the end of a teacher's career, is that money paid to them in a lump sum at the end of that year? Or is it included, spread out over the year as salary?
So in this particular case, the only thing that teachers are eligible for would be the payout on the sick leave, provided that they're eligible, because there are some restrictions on the payout of unused sick leave. They have to have been with the district for a number of years before they're eligible, but if they are eligible, it is paid on a lump sum at the end, with their final paycheck.
And not distributed throughout the year as part of their salary?
Correct.
Okay.
Is that all the discussion we have? We can go on to the next item, since we're discussing things, superintendent's goals.
Mr. President, members of the governing board, attached you'll see my suggested goals for the year. These should not come as a surprise to you in that there's similar ones that we've had in prior years. I think one of the differences this year is my commitment to be better communicative to you as a governing board. And so you'll see in there that part of my hope is that I can have regularly scheduled meetings with both the president and the clerk, not only now, but moving into next year, so that there's that ongoing dialogue. That when we have individuals touring from your elected areas, that I'll make sure that you're aware of that. There's quite a bit of communication that gets sent out in the organization as all staff. And in years past, there's some that I would send on to you as well. I'll still do that. Some of it is stuff that probably doesn't need to go into your inbox, but as an effort to make sure that you have more information about the organization and about what's happening in the organization. And then the others on there again, the increase our success in the TSA placement, industry certifications, to get 2 of our associate programs up and running, to begin the process of creating a very efficient and effective IGA with our districts as it relates to the satellite programming. So anyway, that's just information for you to be aware of what my goals are and what I hope to accomplish before we get to July 1st. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Takes on that discussion. Item 8, I guess we're up to. Action items. A is FTC request letter from superintendent. We got discussion on that?
Mr. President, members of the governing board, if you remember, this goes back probably 2 years ago. That it was asked that EVIT provide a letter of support for the foreign trade zone in Queen Creek. And at the time, there was some question or concern that there was information that we didn't know or couldn't know because it was an undisclosed entity. And so initially, the governing board declined the support of the FTZ zone, foreign trade zone. We had the town of Queen Creek come back and do a presentation and have a discussion, at which time the governing board approved the signage of the FTZ. So we signed it and submitted it. There is a time limit on the FTZ, and that time limit has ran out. And so the town is asking again for support for the FTZ request, and we have folks from the town of Queen Creek here tonight to discuss the FTZ, what it is, why it's needed, the benefit it is to the communities, and then answer any questions you all may have before you make a determination as to whether or not you want to continue supporting the FTZ or not. So,
Can we have those people come forward,
Yep.
please? And thank you for coming.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the governing board. My name is Doreen Cott, and I am the Economic Development Director for the town of Queen Creek. I also have James Smith with Pinal County, who serves as the Economic and Workforce Development Director for the county. And then on the line, in case I need a lifeline, Denise Yanez with the City of Phoenix Foreign Trade Zone office is participating virtually in case there's a question I can't answer about the foreign trade zone. But I'm going to tonight hopefully just provide a high-level overview of the foreign trade zone and then share some status updates on the project. So as Dr. Wilson mentioned, we've been working with LG Energy Solution for over 2 years now, and they have selected a site in Queen Creek, which is in Pinal County side of the town, because we straddle both Maricopa and Pinal counties. And As Dr. Wilson mentioned, they started the FTZ application process many months ago. And then the project actually took a slight pause. And so they are back. Everything is moving forward quickly, but they are starting that process over. And because so much time had lapsed, they had asked for, and Denise with the Foreign Trade Zone Office had suggested that we get updated letters of support. The town and the county have submitted resolutions of support from both of those entities, and there's the other taxing jurisdictions that have we've been reaching out to on LG's behalf. So if we could go to the presentation. Next slide, please. So I was going to talk a little bit about what a foreign trade zone is and what the FTZ status allows. It actually is a reclassification of the taxing percentages, and then as part of that property tax reclassification, part of the process is going out to the taxing jurisdictions that are affected and asking for those letters of support or letters of non-objection. This is part of the application process. So this graphic does show the foreign trade zone 75, of which the LG site would sit, and this excludes the Mesa foreign trade zone number 221. So this is the area that we've been working with Denise from the Foreign Trade Zone Office. Next slide. So foreign trade zones are designated sites licensed by the Foreign Trade Zone Board through the U.S. Department of Commerce. And the primary purpose of a foreign trade zone is to facilitate international trade by providing business with a more flexible and cost-effective environment. So as you know, as a business is going through the site selection process, this is one of the things that they would consider for these very import-export based type uses. So next slide, please. The foreign trade zone status allows the reclassification from 18% to 5% as per Arizona state statute noted there, 42-12006. So this is the assessed valuation. And this is a tool that will ensure that LG's initial investment and continued investment in the community continues. It has a bunch of different benefits, some of which are duty deferral, where import duties and taxes are delayed until the goods actually leave the foreign trade zone area. Custom benefits, certain activities don't have to go through, the different levels of custom. It allows the company flexibility as well as cost savings. Next slide. So these are the affected taxing jurisdictions. So you can see there, Pinal County, the town, J.O. Combs School District, Central Arizona College, Central Arizona Project, and then this evening we are in front of you tonight. Next slide. So just to provide a little bit about the project itself, this graphic shows the 4,100 acres of state land that the town of Queen Creek annexed into the town back in August of 2019. And I have to say, when this site was first annexed, we went through a very extensive conceptual planning process with the state land department. And never really thought that this would become quite the employment interest that it has become. But LG, in April of 2022, was the successful bidder at the auction, and they purchased over 300 acres, and they also have an option on an additional 300 acres for their campus. So within the center of that kind of teal area, which represents the total 4,100 acres, is a very basic site plan of their facilities. So they have actually planned 2 buildings, one at the furthest north end of the site, which is LG Energy Solution, and then another building at the far south end of the site, just adjacent to Germain Road, which is LG Energy Storage Systems. So they are busy working through the processes with the town and the county on these projects. Next slide. This is just a blow up of of that site plan. So again, the one at the top end of the graphic is, we've been calling Project Alpha, which was its code name early on, but is LG Energy Solution. And then the one at the bottom, which is closest to Germain Road, is Project Gemini, which is LG Energy Storage Systems. Next slide. This is just a site plan of the LG Energy Solutions site. They're building, they are going through the planning process right now to get their full site plan approval, which they actually have gotten. And there's a lot of work that's already being done on the site. The town is working to install all of the infrastructure that will be needed to support all of the jobs that this company will be bringing to the area. Next slide. So you might be wondering, well, what will they be manufacturing in these buildings? So on the left side, those batteries that look like your typical AA batteries, that is the cylindrical battery, which is part of the LG Energy Solution. That building that is at the further north end of the site. And those are primarily used for electrical vehicles. And then the battery next to it on the right is a pouch-style battery, which will be manufactured by the LG Energy Storage Systems and is typically used in storage systems for large utilities and whatnot. So two completely different projects, although they are under the LG umbrella. So next slide. There's been a lot of activity already on the site. This is from a couple months ago. This is when we started doing the clear and grub on the site. So their site basically is just, well, it is east of Ironwood Road and will sit between Pecos Road and Germain. So this is some work that's been underway. And then the next slide. This just shows kind of the site planning that is ongoing there. If you're looking at it, that's Ironwood Road on the left, kind of heading north, so you can kind of see they're getting the site ready. And then the next slide just shows some more detail of the work that's being done on site. These were captured with a drone back in November, so there's even been more work that's been done on the site since then. So very exciting. Next slide. And I just wanted to share, because I think, you know, the project is one of the biggest, well, is the biggest project that has landed in Queen Creek. I joke that a couple years ago, the biggest win that our department had was the Costco on Ellsworth Road, and now, you know, LG has far surpassed that with, you can see the capital investment, the number of jobs, and then the total square footage. So when the project first came to you a couple of years ago, it was just Project Alpha, LG Energy Solution, and their capital investment was about $2.8 billion. They took that short pause, and when they came back, they increased their capital investment to $5.5 billion. It includes the additional facility, and you can see there the number of jobs. Project Alpha will be bringing about 2,800 jobs, and then Project Gemini, almost 1,000 jobs. So, you know, quite a lot of employment for the Queen Creek area, for the residents of Queen Creek, Pinal County, and really the entire East Valley. Exciting. So with that, I am happy to try to answer any questions you may have. Again, James is in the audience. He might be able to help as well.
Okay, yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so just to make sure we're on the same page, we voted on this 2 years ago, but we missed the deadline for it to, is that, we voted on Project Alpha, correct? But it didn't pass because it expired. So we're back and they've expanded, and so we're voting on this. Is that, am I getting that right?
So
Or is
I'm
this already
gonna
approved?
see if I can answer that, but you correct me if I'm wrong, Doreen. So you voted on this 2 different times. The first time you voted no because you wanted more information.
Yes.
Then we had Queen Creek come back out. At that point in time, you voted yes. At that point in time, I think it was Project Alpha and Project Gemini that you voted on to approve. The company took a pause in the development, and because they took a pause, it was felt beneficial to come back to the entities and seek support again, even though you've already approved it before. And in theory, arguably, it could stand what was before. the thought process was to come back to you again and make sure that you're still comfortable with it. Even though you approved it once, and even though it's not necessarily materially that much different, it's expanded itself a bit, but not materially that much different than what you approved 2 years ago.
I have a question. Is there, why was there a pause?
So the company decided to go back. They were meeting with different customers, and so we're trying to figure out, one, working with their customers, what their needs would be, how they were going to set up their manufacturing facility to accommodate those customers. And then it was decided, so Project Gemini was not part of the original letter of support. It was decided to expand their presence in Queen Creek with this second project. So again, both under the LG umbrella, but two separate, divisions of the company manufacturing different batteries. So the company had just decided to go back and to kind of recalibrate what they had originally thought they were going to do with Project Alpha, and then they came back with the expanded project.
Okay, so they paused to expand.
That was part of it. I was told it was part working with their customers to understand their customer needs, to determine which customers that they would be selling this product to, and to understand, what they had to do to make sure everything was working, yes.
Can I ask the jobs, what type of jobs, and is there a salary that's scheduled for that?
Yeah, so it's a full range of jobs, so from your engineers to your, line workers actually doing things. So I can probably provide Dr. Wilson a breakdown of that. I know we've seen that. So, and we're working with Rounds Consulting on an economic and fiscal impact analysis, and so I think they have a breakdown in there as well.
So one of the things, Mr. President, members of the governing board, we, meaning EVIT, have been part of the conversation with LG in terms of building their workforce development, because obviously that's the space that we're in and the space we want to lean into and support. And I might be wrong because I'm having an off night, but if I remember correctly, about 2/3 of the jobs that they have are in areas that we can lean in and support. And in those 2/3, then the range was, there was a vast range. But the vast majority of the work that needs to get done at those facilities is work that we train for.
Okay. That was my next question, Mr. President. I was just going to ask, what type of positions would high school students and adult students be able to participate in or benefit from on a two-way street? We provide, apprenticeship, obviously, so it's like a manufacturing, we would provide the certification for that, and then they could be placed as interns or something of that nature, depending on what's the structure of those positions, correct?
And part of what we've said, not only to this entity, but to other entities that we've worked with is, tell us what you need,
Right.
and we can then develop it. What we can't do is guess. And so part of the conversations we've been having is, what does that specifically look like? And what specifically is the task and skill needed? And then we can lean in and support it. And obviously, there's going to be a range from welding, in some cases, to the orbital welding, to programming, so there's just a range that's there that we can provide if we know specifically what the need is. But based on the projection that I saw, about 2/3, only about 1/3 of it are four-year degree positions. I could be wrong, but there was quite a bit that we could lean into and support.
Okay, thank you very much.
So
Any other
quick question, to make sure I'm understanding, sorry, it's the disembodied voice who's speaking. To make sure that I'm understanding how foreign trade zones work, given that there's a tax benefit to, in this case, LG, is there a fiscal impact to EVIT and any of our resources from this, or no?
So I'll answer that generally. So right now, the property is collecting, no property tax whatsoever. So even at the reduced property tax rate, it will have a benefit to the taxing jurisdictions. I don't know what that actual dollar amount would be. Dr. Wilson, we can maybe work with you to get that, or if you may have it. But so right now, there's no property tax being collected. There's nothing going on at the site. And so this project, although, yes, it will be at a lower assessed value, will still be bringing in, because of the significant capital investment, money to EVIT.
Well, and I think too, with FTZ's part of the hope, and correct me if I'm wrong, part of the hope is that with this industry comes housing that is built to support the industry, which comes business to support the housing, and it's those entities that ultimately also provide financial support to us through their partnership in the CTED. So even though the entity right now, there's no tax, we'll get a small tax, the belief is that it will grow the area with households that become part of the EVIT CTED, which does provide not only financial support to us, but also potential students that we can work with and help change their lives.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Would the gentleman from Pima like to add to this? Now, excuse me.
Panel, yeah, thank you. James Smith, Economic and Workforce Development Director. I don't really have a lot more to add other than what Doreen has said, but I would like to thank Dr. Wilson. I will say, excuse me, that LG has been one of the most aggressive companies that we've seen in terms of having folks on the ground, having regular meetings in order to develop their workforce. Remember, we're still probably 18 months out from them actually being up and operational, but they are meeting regularly with all of our community colleges and EVIT and CAVIT in Pinal County. So really, really just would commend them and thank Dr. Wilson for his participation in that, because it is going to create a significant amount of jobs for our area.
Thank you.
So, Mr. President,
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hobson.
a question for Dr. Wilson. I'm obviously going to support this, but do we have a principled way of distinguishing between this project and the next time a developer comes along and says, I'm going to put 100 houses here, but I want you to give me a preferred tax rate for that? I want EVA to agree to accept, a third of what what other folks are paying in terms of assessments to support even other school districts. Do we have a principled way of distinguishing this project from those?
So, Mr. Hobson, let me think of, I'll try to answer your question. I think there are certain criteria that must be met in order for an entity in a certain geographic location to qualify for an FTZ. So part of that vetting process is just by the nature of the industry that can qualify for and the area that it can qualify for. Outside of that, there isn't any other entity that would come to us and ask for a reduced tax rate, just because that doesn't exist. It's not a thing.
Do we have a concern that Pima County is going to consider itself a foreign entity and want to? No, good, I'm sorry. Baja, Arizona, as it's known. All right, thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Mr. President, may I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm curious how the town of Queen Creek decided on 5% versus coming down from the 18%.
Mr. President, board member, it wasn't a town decision. That's just how the foreign trade zone is set up. So it would be for any foreign trade zone area in Arizona that assessed value.
Any other questions?
Let's have a motion.
It is a action item, so we need a motion.
I'll move that we approve the issuance of a letter of support to town of Queen Creek to create this free trade zone.
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion? Call for the question.
Watkins,
Aye.
Covington,
Abstain?
Metcalf,
Aye.
Boggs.
Abstain.
Okay, let me take better notes here. Lane,
Aye.
Ellison,
Aye.
Boyle,
Aye.
Hobson,
Aye.
and McAfee is a no. Motion passes.
Motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Get my glass off so I can read. Can turn the page. Okay. Item B is the GMP 7.1 contract for Building 1. And you have a nice diagram to go with it, I saw someplace. Okay.
Mr. President, members of the governing board, one of the things that we have been very proactive in doing, and I appreciate Chase's willingness to do this with us, is come to you repeatedly, not only to give you updates, but also to be proactive in the procurements. As we go through the process of renovating and remodeling this campus, we've come a long way, but we've got a long way to go. And one of the bigger pieces of renovation is just in front of us, and that's Building 1. So we have Don and Chase and Jenner and Vicente, the whole crew here, to give you a brief update on Building 1, but also to talk about GMP 7.1, which is kind of that proactive approach towards a GMP for Building 1 that allows us to get some lead time on some material that will allow us to begin the project on time and not slow us down because we're waiting for material to arrive. So Don, do you want to start? Are you starting, or?
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Mr. President, members of the board. As Dr. Wilson mentioned, on our schedule, the next building is Building 1, which is the one that we're in right now. It's approximately 140,000 square feet. It's the biggest building on campus, 2 stories. So you can imagine when we take a look at renovating that size of a building, we need to break it into some pieces. And so we worked with the staff to phase it that would be comparable to be able to support staff, students, and so forth. So the first phase of this is 7.1, which is the bakery area. And I think you have an overall floor plan of that. It's the lower left corner is the blue area. That's going to be our first phase because of the schedule that we need to get that started right away so that it can be completed this summer and be able to open that area up for the fall semester. We'll bring you some additional GMPs for that area, and then the rest of the first floor and the second floor will follow. And so, as was mentioned, there's some things to help us get started that we would like you to approve, and that's for some demolition, some early procurement that Chase will present to you and give you an outline of what those items are.
Now, looking at the diagram, we're only working on the first floor, not the second floor.
That is correct. We're going to start with the first floor, and but we're going to start specifically with that lower left corner, which is the bakery right away. We'll come back to you in the next couple of months as we progress with the rest of the first floor. Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Statements? Okay, so we need a...
Mr. President, if we could, though, if we could actually present the GMP, so Jenner can kind of walk you through what you're approving.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Mr. President, Governor, members of the board, first of all, thank you guys for the opportunity to be here tonight and bring forth this early procurement and demolition GMP for this exciting bakery transformation. The first facet of the GMP is that early procurement scope that Dr. Wilson talked about a little bit. As you guys may be familiar with, the last couple of years, especially since COVID, material lead times on specialty equipment and certain materials has been extremely volatile and rather lengthy. So it's important on kind of fast-track design and constructed jobs like this that we order material now so that they arrive in time when they actually need to be put in place, and in this case, turn over the building in July. Hopefully this is a process that you guys are a little bit familiar with as well. For last year's GMPs that we had for Building 679, Building 1, and Building 3, and Building 11, we executed early procurement GMPs for fan coil units on all those as well. Specific to this early procurement GMP, we have food service equipment for the bakery. That includes your walk-in freezer, your walk-in cooler, your what we call captive air system, which is your fume hoods, your makeup air unit, and the fire suppression system that goes with it. So early procuring material for those. We also have some plumbing equipment for a grease interceptor, and then again, HVAC equipment. So again, fan coil units, and then we also have a 15-ton air handler unit. All of the equipment I just mentioned is anywhere from about 16 weeks to 28 weeks out. So in the case of the air handling unit, for example, that's about 28 weeks out, 6.5, 7 months. It's important we order that now, and then over the next month as we work to that full GMP, we'll be going through the submittal process on that, actually getting that ordered with our trade partner, so it arrives in June, we start it up, and then have the building energized to turn over into July. Keep in mind on all of these kind of early procurement items that are on this GMP, this is just material only. So when we come to the board later on in February with your full GMP for the bakery, we'll have all the costs captured there for the associated infrastructure, the install, and anything that goes with it. So like the ductwork, for example, associated with that air handling unit and fan coil units. The second facet to this GMP is what we call make-safe investigations and demolition scope. So kind of on these tricky interior remodels where we have, or our workspace is directly adjacent to occupied corridors and classrooms. It's important that we kind of get up above ceiling now and start investigating how we're gonna actually isolate our portion of the building from the rest of the occupied space. So we'll be seeing how we can put isolation valves on chilled and hot water lines. We'll be seeing how we can isolate the electrical systems and most importantly, the life safety systems. So the fire alarm and fire suppression systems are up and active in the occupied space, however shut down in our work zone so we can build. With that said, we'll also be tackling over the next 4 weeks or so, leading up to that full GMP, 100% of the demolition scope. So basically, when we do have that full GMP, we'll have a clean slate, a blank canvas, if you will, to go ahead and start building from. Really valuable to have that now as well. We'll capture any sort of unforeseen conditions that we may have on the front end and only make that kind of later on GMP more reflective of what's actually there, and then streamline the construction of the build back as well. Also, you'll see on this GMP, we have some items in there for electrical and plumbing. Kind of when we're out there doing the work, we want to be as proactive as possible, getting some of the work we can done on the front end that we can. So we have a gas line that we're running from building 2, where the existing bakery is, to building 3. So we hope to take care of that, as well as the grease interceptor, and also some of the electrical make-safe stuff, running new conduit, running below slab infrastructure, all of that stuff. But that's basically the gist of the early GMP. If you guys have any questions, happy to help.
Any questions? Yeah, Amber?
This is probably a stupid question. I'm looking at the diagram of the buildings, and I noticed that most of them are starting in July. And I'm just wondering if you probably said this, but why wouldn't we start maybe end of May or June when students aren't there? I'm sure that,
Someone at
I'm
Dr.
not a
Doolin.
construction person, so
Yeah,
forgive me.
Dr. Doolin's been the ringmaster of.
Time schedule.
Good
Yes, please tell
evening,
me everything that I
President and board members. So when you look at this scope, some of the things that aren't on here are the existing ones that are already in progress. So we already have Building 11 that is not finished and is not slated to be finished until March. So right now, everyone who's going to go into Building 11 is occupying space in Building 14. So in order to make sure that we can still house all the students and get all of the programs taken care of, we have to chunk it out because I have to have a place for them to go. It's a great question, why aren't we starting in May? Because I have to have space in July. Right, so if you see that there's some things being completed, that's why it was so important that they started the bakery now, because I need that bakery completed before school starts in July so that I can put those students back in. And if you notice on the back side of that, there's 2 additional classrooms. That will help me move those students who are in the spaces that are going to start going under construction in July into those finished spaces. And then you'll notice on the far right in the bright green, that is barbering, and barbering is going to be done in the summer. But that one completely has to be top to bottom done over that 2-month period. So in order for them to be able to get in there, get all of that done, plus stay on track with the bakery, they couldn't spread themselves so thin. And it's really about, really we're playing shuffleboard on figuring out where are we going to put the students. So that's why the spacing, we can't do everything in the 2 months in the summer, and we just have to space it around so that we have a place for all the students to have programs and for us to operate.
Thank you, I knew it would make sense.
Mr. President, I have another question. For bakery, when bakery is being remodeled and updated, where will the students be able to continue using the equipment that they have now? Or are they going to have new equipment, take the old stuff out, put the new things in, and they have new equipment? So how is that working while the students are trying to get their certifications and their skills?
Some of both. So what's happening right now is bakery right now is located inside the culinary building. Culinary has grown, baking has grown, and so we're separating them. So that's why they're going, bakery is moving to building 1. So right now, baking is going to be able to finish up where they started the year planned in the culinary building, but then they will start new in the baking building.
And that's
Question-
part of the request for the
question for
early
you.
procurement. That's part of the request for the early procurement, so that we can make sure that we have those ovens and kilns and things like that here in time for us to start in July. So the reason for that now.
We already approved last time for a bunch of equipment, didn't we? So it's ordered. Yeah.
Correct.
RFQ. And I want to appreciate the fact that the auditorium is to be determined, so we still have a meeting place. And when are we going to get our meeting place back?
That'll come back in the superintendent's update, so we'll talk about that later.
I will wait for that. Okay, let's see what, we got to go on the next thing. Okay, we need a motion to vote.
I'll move that we approve the item as presented for 8B for contract for commercial baking, GMP 7.1 contract.
Mr. President, I second the motion for item 8B, 7 GMP, that's 8, okay. GMP 7.1 contract building 1 commercial baking.
Thank you. Any more discussion up here? If not, we'll ask for the question.
Watkins?
Aye.
Covington?
Aye.
Metcalf?
Aye.
Boggs?
Aye.
Lane?
Aye.
Ellison? Aye. Boyle?
Aye.
Hobson?
Aye.
And McAfee's an aye. Motion carries.
Okay, it is passed. Now we go on to item C, policy revision, second read. Wait, I'm in the right
You're
place.
right. You're good. You're right.
I got 14 papers up here.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
This is the policy we did the first read on at the last meeting. This is the one that changes the board's travel budget to 10% of the district's travel budget from the prior fiscal year. Would still require you to vote on each individual trip, but that's the gist of it.
Okay. Need a motion?
I move to
Mr. President.
approve. Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
President,
Yes.
I want to move to table this, and I'm going to tell you why. When you get down to the bottom of the agenda, you're going to see that we have expenditures just for this, that we're going to approve for this time, which I approve, by the way, which I'm supportive of, which will consume already about 50% of the $20,000 that we've got, that we're limiting ourselves to. We haven't factored in the trips to Hawaii that board members are concerned about. This is going to be an embarrassing problem to work around, and I think we ought to table this and consider it a little bit more carefully. And it's a popular kind of thing to be doing, but I think we're not thinking it through very carefully. You look at the bottom of the agenda, we have almost 50% of it consumed just in the two agenda items at the bottom, and we know we've got much more expenditures than that coming through for board travel. Point out that by the by, I'd point out that we are a volunteer board, and what we do these things because of public service. I won't be attending I won't be asking to attend the conference back in DC, but I thought it was incredible last year, and I, except for the fact that our granddaughter is being born at just that time where I'm going to be here rather than there. I encourage people to go to the Washington thing, but if any more people sign up, we will have consumed almost all our budget. So I think it'd be wise of us to table this particular policy revision at least for a month.
I have a comment. It might help and change some minds. I had requested to go on to the Hawaii trip, and I'm looking through the options for board members. There's not much that fit for me, in my opinion, so I am going to request that I am taken from that trip, and I'm just going to focus on policy. It also fiscally responsible. The policy trip for board members, I feel, is the most beneficial. So I don't know if that helps with a decision that would be made. It frees up, whatever, money for other trips.
Mr. President, I have also withdrawn from the Hawaii professional development trip as well.
Okay, that'll come up in a little bit, but yes. Oh, no, that already came up.
Yeah, that
We already
passed.
passed it, so that's okay.
So
It's good information. We need a second on the policy revision?
I think,
Second to table?
yes,
Second to table.
a motion to table.
Did anybody second the motion to table?
I will second to table.
Okay, now you have a motion.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
Before we take a vote on tabling, one question that I have, and I'm going to ask it now because I think it'll help me with the tabling question, is the policy retroactive? So it applies for if we approve it today, it would apply for this fiscal year. But to my knowledge, I don't know what we've already spent on board member development and travel to date.
Zero.
Which would also be helpful knowledge to know when voting on the two subsequent travel requests, which I agree with Mr. Hobson. I'm very supportive of those. I think those are super important. And like Ms. Boggs said, I think the fiscal impact of the policy session will be really, really helpful for EVIT to have members at. But yeah, so I guess my question is it retroactive? And if so, then if we pass it, then what amount do we have left as board members for this fiscal year?
Okay.
It is not
Ms.
retroactive.
Perez, you want to answer that question for him, please?
I believe that Kevin has a portion of that
Kevin has
answer.
Yeah, it's not retroactive, but it becomes effective immediately. So it would apply going forward. So you would have to take into account the past spending from this fiscal year going forward.
And do we know what that has been?
That's where Mr. Perez is going to come in.
We don't have it in total. I think at the time when we looked at the 5 individuals that were going to go to Hawaii, I think each one of those was about 3,500-ish, right? So on the rough estimate, that trip alone was probably close to $19,000. Then that doesn't include anything moving forward. So whether it would be the winter conference, whether it be the Virginia conference, whether it be the conference this summer in Tucson, none of that was included, but that Singleton conference captured probably about 18,000. The 10% the board agreed on, or agreed to, at least in principle or in theory, was based on about $200 and some $1,000. So the total amount, if I'm remembering correctly, for board was somewhere in the neighborhood of about $21,000, $22,000. So if you look at the Hawaii being about 18, even though that's changed now because the numbers have gone down, to your point, there's a good amount, Mr. Hobson, that's already been cannibalized, especially since it's not retroactive, but is progressive, and the dollars haven't been encumbered yet for the Hawaii trip.
Got it. Thank you.
So you have a second on the
Yes,
table?
we have a second on tabling it. Okay. That's for the question.
Watkins,
Aye.
Covington,
Aye.
Metcalf. Voting to table.
I thought. I'm feeling her in this vote.
I guess, I thought we discussed this, but if that's what you want to do is table it, then that's fine. I thought we came to a conclusion on our policy and how we wanted to go ahead and execute this moving forward, but aye.
Okay. Boggs,
I feel the same way. I thought we discussed this and came to a conclusion. But if we need to table it for more discussion, then I vote aye also. Again.
aye. Okay. Lane,
I'm going to support tabling it, so aye would be my vote.
Ellison,
I'm going to support tabling it since I have no idea.
Smart man. Okay.
Mr. Boyle,
Aye.
Hobson,
Aye.
And McAfee's an aye. Motion carries. Let us tease.
Right along.
Just put papers up. There we go. Turn pages, I lose everything. Okay, item D, revised early childhood education and pharmacy technician fees. Any discussion?
I believe you need a motion.
Well, you
Yeah,
can
we should.
discuss before you motion, but
No, we need
Either
to
way.
discuss it after we move it.
any motion?
Mr. President, I make a motion that we accept item D, revised early childhood education pharmacy technician fees for school year 2024-25.
I'll second.
Okay, got a first and a second. Now I need discussion.
Ms. Perez or Dr. Doolin, would either one of you like to address? And pharmacy tech fee increase? Decrease?
I'm back again, Mr. President, members of the board. So I'm going to go through both of these. The decrease in early childhood came in when we had started crosswalking the curriculum, and I just lost the name, something Safe Talk. That was part of the early childhood curriculum, but it was already covered, that piece of the was already covered in another area. So basically, we were making them pay for two different certifications that were covering the same thing. So we got rid of one because that made the most sense to meet the state standards. We didn't need both, we only needed one. So we got rid of the duplication there. The other one in the pharmacy tech, the reason for that change is because we forgot to include that they have to be fingerprinted. That was an oversight.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for the question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, here comes the fun one. Item E, travel to the ACTE AZ ECOVA Midwinter Conference in Prescott. Prescott.
Mr. President,
That's
I
right.
move the approval of E and F on our agenda.
Prescott.
Hold on.
Mr. Hobson, I'm having a really hard time hearing you. I don't know if that's our end.
Well, it's part of that, but I'm having a hard time.
Okay,
I
okay.
I was
couldn't hear
going
what
to
you said.
suggest that we move the approval of both E and F, 8E and F on our agenda. That was my motion.
If you move to combine them,
Or both,
I
yeah.
cannot hear what he's saying, I'm sorry.
To do, Mr. Hobson, are you wanting to do them at the same time?
Yes,
The travel for E and F?
So who made
Yes.
the motion?
Mr. Hobson
Oh,
made the
he's
motion.
made the motion for A and F. I'll second that motion.
A and F? Okay. Does anybody wants to decline that's on here or go to it? Either of those?
Wait, what are we doing
I have some questions.
We got some questions, go ahead.
So, oops, sorry. I have to apologize, I wasn't here in December, so I may have missed this discussion. What Mr. Hobson brought up about Hawaii just eating up so much of our budget. I want to go back to my biggest complaint in board travel is giving teachers and curriculum and admin and everyone the chance first. So I have an ask, and I don't know if this is appropriate. I would like it, I don't know if anyone else would, to have a list of all those people who are teachers or admin who would prefer to go to these events before I make a decision. That would really help me decide some of these things. So this isn't really technically about either one of these. I would like to have that discussion with Mr. Hobson regarding the Hawaii and our budget.
There won't be
But
time for
if
this
I could please ask for a list of staff who are already signing up to go. If there's one where there's 20 different staff members, I will happily stand back from that one. So that would really help me if I could ask you to do that. If that's appropriate,
Miss,
I'm not sure.
we absolutely can do that.
Does that need to be an agenda item?
I can bring it back as an agenda item. I think the
Well, for the midwinter, there's not time.
Not
to
for
bring
these
that.
two, but it's something that I would have brought up at the December event because you voted to approve the ACTE Regional, which is in Honolulu. And there were 5 of us who wanted to go, so that I would have brought that up if I had been able to be a part of that meeting, and I wasn't. So that's, I'm saying I'd like to do that now, or put it on a further agenda item.
So, yes, the answer to your question is yes, we can do that. will be honest with you, the whole travel is becoming baffling to me. Just baffling. And so if doing that helps push us along, then 100% they'll do that. I can tell you right now that there's no staff signed up to go for Hawaii. And the reason for that is because it took us so long as an organization to figure out what we were doing that by the time we tried to register for Hawaii, there was no positions left. So we put our institution on a wait list, and 5 slots opened. And so we gave the 5 slots open to board members.
Okay, well, let me ask you this.
I understand that, but I understand that, and I'm not being critical. But my point is that we're going to have to work our way through this year. But at some point in time, we've got to have some clarity on what we want as a board as it relates to travel and conferences. And I know we've been going back and forth on that because I can give you a list, and I guarantee you, I can find a conference that it is appropriate. Almost every conference that we bring to you, it's appropriate on some level for our staff or administration to go to. Or we wouldn't bring them to you, right? So the question becomes, is it 2 that is the number? Is it 3? Is it 5? How many? That's why we came to you earlier this year at the very beginning and said, here's all the conferences. We tried to be proactive in it and on it, and it just hasn't quite worked. And so, yes, I will bring that list to you. It's obviously too late for midwinter conference because that decision has to be made tonight. It's appropriate for staff to attend the Virginia conference because there's benefit that they can come of that, but not at the expense. But to get there the way that we've gotten there isn't healthy for you guys, and it's not healthy for us as an organization. So I absolutely will bring that to you.
Can I just clarify with you? Are you saying that we only got, 4 spots in the Honolulu ACTE, and they all went to board members? Is that what?
We had 5.
We had 5, and they've all gone to board members?
Correct.
So not okay, then.
No, there's 2 openings.
Well, now 2 have opened since then.
I would
but-
like to make it a 3rd because I would like to defer mine to staff to go to that.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that would absolutely help me decide on the very few that are appropriate for board members.
Right.
And if they are the ones that are appropriate for board members, if it's still more important for staff to go. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
The motion is to table, to combine both items E and F together.
Yes, sir.
There's a second. I don't know if you've had a vote on that or not.
We have not had a vote,
Okay.
so we'll call for the question.
Yes, sir. Watkins?
Aye.
Covington?
Aye.
Metcalf? Aye. Boggs?
Aye.
Lane?
Aye.
Ellison?
Aye.
Boyle?
Aye.
Hobson?
Aye.
McAfee's an aye. Motion carries.
So, Mr. President, may I make a suggestion?
Yes, sir.
So you're approving these together as an action item. I would suggest that there be discussion that revolved around which board members are interested in attending which conferences, and that at some point, you as a governing board will have an idea of who's interested in attending what, and then somebody write that down and then make a motion based on the conversation that you just had that identified which board members are interested in the ACOVA conference, which board members are interested in the Virginia conference. And then you have an action item that includes, a motion that includes those individuals and those conferences.
And Mr. President? Along,
so you guys,
along,
Didn't we do that?
along those same lines, I was very much in favor of the suggestion that, I don't know how we do this, that the opportunity for staff to attend these things should take a priority over board members, candidly. I liked what I heard, and I think we ought to think about how we implement that.
Mr. President, I apologize. Items E and F include the board members that are interested in attending those different conferences. So if you, just
Yes.
have a motion and a second, which you have, you can call the vote. They haven't voted on it, have we?
We already did that.
The whole thing?
Oh,
for
We're on the 9. Super.
We're
You're already
halfway home
talking.
now.
Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. This
So,
travel thing is
I'm
about
glad
to
I'm
make
not
me
the only
go.
one that gets lost.
This travel thing's about ready to make me lose my dang mind.
I second that.
I'll third it.
Motion carried.
Okay.
Staff report, superintendent, summary.
So I'd like the board to consider traveling, and just kidding. We're not gonna do that.
Aren't we hiring a bus driver?
We are hiring a bus driver,
Okay, great.
concierge.
Then we'll just
We
put
got
all
it.
on, we'll just
We're
get
good.
on the seat and he can drive the bus.
Mr. President, members of the governing board,
Take
one of the
the minnow
things,
over there.
one of the things that we're very proud about is the constant work that we do here at EVIT, and oftentimes goes unnoticed by the day in and day out individuals. I sent you a notice, an article, the newspaper, in which our radio station was voted the best high school radio station in the nation. That is remarkable on so many different levels. And what was most remarkable to me is some of the stories the students told about their opportunity, and talked about how this is what they found the passion and what they want to do for the rest of their life, and how amazing it is to them at this age they get to wake up and go do the work that they hope they do for a career. And I don't know, and I've said this time and time again, that at the end of the day, I lose sight, because I'm in it every single day, how uniquely special this institution is, and the opportunity that you all give our students is truly exceptional. And we see it day in and day out. In order to do that, though, we're always in the process of trying to make the organization better. And part of that better is rooted in the building and development and renovation. And you have been gracious in the expansion out of Power, and you've also been gracious in the renovation and improvement here at Maine. We currently are in the process of renovating Building 3 in the boardroom, as well as Building 11, which is the fire building. Building 3, the boardroom, the district office. The district office portion will most likely be done in the next 2 weeks. The boardroom is going to be a bit delayed because of some of the technical issues in terms of some of the technology that's going in there, some of the hardware that's going into that side of the building, and that probably isn't going to be ready until mid-February. So we probably have at least 2 more meetings in here before we revert back to the boardroom. The fire building, Building 11, is scheduled to be done in March. After that, as you saw tonight, then we're going to turn our attention to the baking, and then you saw on the schedule that we're also going to do barbering. Then we're going to begin doing Building 1 in the bottom floor, and eventually Building 1 on the top floor, and then turn our attention to culinary, as well as the central plant. The hope is that we have all of the renovations done within the next 2 years. And I know that seems like a long period of time, but as Dr. Doolin tried to describe, building a building without anybody in it goes a heck of a lot faster than trying to do the renovations and move students around. So the logistics of it are slowing us down a little bit. You'll also know that if you drive down Main Street, you see that we're a good way down the road of the Foster residential facility. We're hoping this month to have, it's not a ribbon cutting or a groundbreaking, I don't know what we're going to call it, but we will invite all of you, obviously, to celebrate the decision and the success that we hope to have in that facility. That's still on schedule to be delivered to us the end of June with first part of July, so we can start admitting residents the latter part of July. We're in the process of looking at parking here at the main campus. One of the things that is amazing to me to think is that we will probably run out of parking space before we run out of building space. And so we're going to have to figure out some of the parking issues here at the main campus. And so we most likely will come back to you in the next several months, both here in Power, on possible solutions to improve some of the parking on this campus, and as well as the ability for students to get on and off this campus. Second semester has started. Enrollment is underway. We're doing enrollment a bit differently this year than we've done in years past, and I'm very grateful for the work that Dr. Doolin, that Dr. Schreiner, that Mr. Casaro are all putting in towards our enrollment, in which we're actually going into the classrooms and enrolling students that are returning right then, versus the way that we've done it in years past. We think that's going to give us a far more accurate reflection of students that are interested in returning. The hope is obviously that we have more students than we've had previous years return, as well as more students attend for the first time next year than what we've had in previous years. We started our first associate degree program last week, associate degree in surgical technologies. We went in and met the students today and talked with them, and it was really interesting because when I asked the students, there was probably 20 of them, 25 in the classroom, and I said to the students, how many of you have heard of us before? And about half of them raised their hand. And I said, well, how'd you hear about us? And I said, well, when I was high school, I either came here, or when I was in high school, I heard about you. When I was high school, and so the work that we do in high school has tentacles towards helping individuals, even as an adult, understand that there's an opportunity to come here and have your life changed. So second semester is up and running, and we're grateful for the opportunity, and we look forward to bringing back to you future GMPs to continue the expansion and to get you back into your boardroom probably the middle part of February. Mr. Covington.
of this year.
No, yes.
Well, he said it was going to take 2 years, so I'm thinking 2026.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are the last building, yes.
Well, that's fun. Okay, anything to add to the calendar? Yes, what do you want to add to the calendar, Mr. Lane?
Just make sure we're all clear on the next meeting.
It's on January, Monday, 22nd?
22nd, yeah.
Says it right there. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a holiday on the 15th, so we've got that one, so.
Yep. Okay, it's 2 weeks from now. No one wants to add anything?
Just what I asked you about, what we talked about.
This is when you want to add. what
Or
you do.
I believe, Dr.
Just, you got to mention it.
Just to add that I'd like you to discuss that.
Chip.
What we discussed earlier, thank you.
Which is discussed earlier about. who's
About
going-
what staff.
Staff
would
wants to
like
go.
to that.
Or
yes.
how many staff?
Or how, yeah. all of
And
that.
as painful as it is, I'm going to put board travel on the agenda, just so we can finally.
Here's potentially a more fun topic. I really miss Students of the Month, and that's always such a great way to stay connected with the mission. I love hearing about it and our wins from you, Dr. Wilson. But to the extent that we can have Students of the Month back, maybe it's not month, maybe it's quarterly, but something like that I think was always really fun last year, and I think would be great for us to restart.
Agreed.
Love that.
Okay, if not, we'll go to adjournment. You have a motion?
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
We have Mr. Lane, a second.
I'll second.
You have a second? Okay, for the question, as a acclamation.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Thank you.
We are adjourned.